Okay, since it's a minute or so after 11, figure we should begin to make the most of our time together today, our hour. Thank you for joining us for what is now, I think, our third community call. Our topic for today is discovery writ large. So we're thinking not solely about search, but all sort of routes to content in Omeka, both primarily Omeka S, because that's where people's interests seem to lie. But also we'll think about and happy to entertain questions about Omeka Classic and those sorts of things. We've got a pretty good agenda today. As you know, it's been shared with you, it's in the chat as well. We're going to begin with Kim, who's going to talk about content discovery and building effective pages and those sorts of things, and moving laterally through sites. Then we're going to move on to John, who's going to spend some time talking to us about how the actual built-in searches function and how to make better use of them. And then Danny's gonna take us for a spin through a list of add-ons that can add to and modify the way you offer search to your users. Then we'll have some time for community showcase and discussion. As always, you should feel free along the way to post questions in the chat. And we'll monitor those and try and surface them and capture all of your commentary and your questions as we move through the day. Kim, are you ready to start us off?
Yeah, all right. Let me start sharing my screen here. All right. So I'll be covering techniques for better content discovery. So a lot of this community call will be very search centered as the sort of main approach to discovery. I'm going to do a brief overview of the non-search techniques to uh, guiding audiences through your materials. And I would say that this part of this talk is like aimed a little bit more towards like beginners to intermediate site authors, those who maybe want like a reminder of ways they can really bump up their connections in their sites. I'm going to start with the landing pages. My examples are going to be from some projects out in the wild, as well as um, a bit from a demo site I've set up so that you can see a little bit of the admin side of things, how I've set up. Let's see here. So landing pages, they are the first things your users see, and I find that they are often one of the trickier parts of a project to work on. Like you can work on like your data model and like understand like your greater mission goals, but like figuring out how to lay them out on a landing page is often a really daunting task. I see a lot of Omeka projects that will have like a long textual overview of the site and then kind of rely on the navigation as like your access points to the rest of your content, which is good, but I feel like we could be doing more. So things like when I think about access points, I think about different ways of providing context for your users to explore your materials. So these contexts can be things um, like subject themes. There's the sort of go-to of like more uh, narrative-based contexts. So your site pages with like your essays or your more like long form um, guidance for your content. As you could also be exploring the types of materials that you have, like especially if you offer um, more than just text, but also those producing the texts or like where they're from, that sort of thing. Exposing those facets, even outside of search, can be a major asset to um, helping your users discover uh, different ways that your materials are connecting to each other. And so I've pulled together some examples. So let me pull those up. And So right here, I've got the Narcotic City Archive. Hopefully that's showing up away from my slideshow. Good. What I really like about this, so it starts off with showcasing its stories, which are its site pages, its sort of narrative content, but it also provides like a little brief explanation of the other types of access points. So its collections, which are very thematically based. There's the stories with the narrative content, or you could just dive in to items, which is just like the whole pool with their structured filters. I also really liked Chicago Playgrounds, which is someone's personal project exploring the playgrounds of Chicago. They have like uh, their narrative content, which are tours and like their personal favorites, but they also have a number of facets like neighborhoods or playground features or like the types of equipment that you might be looking for. And so like laying that out um, for the user is really helpful. And a huge part of this that what I like on their landing page is that they also include like the interactive map that really covers the whole breadth of of like where their materials are located, or I guess in this case, their materials are playgrounds. But especially if you have something interactive like that, like it's such a huge way to entice your audience to really explore what you're presenting. And just like a quick shout out to Shining a Light. This is like an exploration of underrepresented composers, and they focus on their types. So they have the composers, the creators of these music scores, and like I feel like that's a very like straightforward and like nice framing for like what you're going to find in here. Um, I also, let's see, I think that like you could do even more with where is it? Let me pull up the demo site that I had. Just a little bit of window juggling here. I'll come back to that in oh wait, here we go. Um, so my demo site is a classic project that I imported into S just to show like more ways that we could that this project could create connections. Um, but they were very emphatic on their narrative essays, but also had like a huge number of types of materials. They had audio, they had maps, they have events for a timeline. And so like using like the browse preview block within Omeka S's page editor is a great way to like kind of give samples of materials and try to like provide different framings. So a lot of they have a lot of images that had a lot of thematic subject matter uh, associated with them. And so like showing samples of those themes within that particular resource type, giving a sense of events from the timeline. Um, and that's just in the admin side, uh, creating a query that like emphasizes those resource types. Beyond the landing page, though, you can do a lot with creating connections between your resources through their values. S is in particular the one of the main features of it is that you can create resource values. And this is a great way to sort of tie resources to each other, their relation through relations. Like this is a way that resources can provide context for each other. So again, like the one that I keep on going back to is like creators for a resource. If you have a creator item and provide it as the value for one of their works, going back to the creator page can then produce a whole list of linked resources. You can see all of that creator's works within a site. Um, One great example of a site that does this fairly extensively. It's the Saltaire collection. Um, and I'm just going to pull up this newspaper clipping here. Um, so it provides a lot of links out to the type of material it is, the format, but you can see the linked resources here. So you can see the person that's associated with this newspaper clipping as well as like an event. And going back to that person, you get a whole bunch of other, it's a jumping point for a bunch of other materials related to them. And in the classic project I was experimenting with in my demo site, um, it had a glossary of terms. And initially it was just like a pool of terms that were kind of thrown into the item pool that didn't relate to anything. But for example, excuse my complete lack of French knowledge, but Abe, I searched for all the items that mention it and set it as the like set the mentions property to this term, this resource. And now you can see all the items that mention that term, and you can see that uh, the keywords that are relevant to understanding it. This would be a great way to um, kind of beef up a glossary sort of entry point. Um, for a much simpler way of making connections in your site, especially for like existing data that you don't really have time to create like whole resources or whole metadata lists for. We have a module metadata browse that simply searches through your items for shared subject or shared values. So um, going back to this example, so newspaper cutting, it just looked for all items that list newspaper cutting as its format and just leads you to a simple list. But it's a very like quick and efficient way to create those kinds of connections. And let's see here. Doing things, I also forgot to mention that going back to linked resources for a moment, I wanted to also call out that this site, as a result of creating all these relationships with the linked data, uh, they actually used it to create a whole data visualization that is quite extensive here. And my computer can't quite handle like the sheer amount of work that they put into this, but like you can already get an impressive taste of like um, a really interactive way of like a user exploring your materials. And finally, the most straightforward way of providing context for your materials, just including items on your site pages. I only mentioned this just because um, in Omeka S, anytime you include an item or resource, this could be an item set as well, um, you get an automatically generated link back to the site pages that it's mentioned on. So if someone's diving in from a browse list from a search, it's an easy way to get back to like longer narrative context for what the item is. And uh, it's just like a bunch of ways to uh, understand your materials and like find different ways that different doors for your user from wherever they entered your project. And there are other ways like um, other contexts that you could be using, especially in our modules, mapping, uh, timeline. This site was using data visualization, but um, Danny will be going into many of those much more extensively in her talk.
All right.
And that's what I have.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. It's good to get a refresher on the sort of basic core functions of linked data that allow users to move sort of laterally through your content in a more extensive way. Now we're going to turn it over to John Flatness, who is going to talk to us a little bit about how search actually functions. Sorry, I'm sorry. I forgot.
You're the microphone.
I
There
forgot.
we go.
We're sharing a mic here, and I forgot. I muted John, and he was talking to you. I apologize.
Well, we didn't miss anything. So surely the share will work. I'm very confident.
And it did.
Look at this. Okay. So, hi. My little presentation is just about um what you get in terms of features for search, just out of the box vanilla, what Omeka comes with without, we already had a little talk about modules and some of the things they can change, and they can make, quite a lot of changes in the area of search, but this is just going to talk about what you get with nothing, and this is the default theme. Um, Pretty much these features are going to be the same across really any theme. The only thing that's going to change is kind of where things are. So there's two basic major places. We're talking mostly on the sort of front side, what users are going to see. There's two major places for the built-in search that people will be able to sort of start from. And so one is this simple search box. That's probably the most likely one that people are actually certainly it's what people are gonna see first generally. And mostly this is just gonna be, themes are gonna present this somewhere up here in a corner, but all that can be changed. That search is just sort of a simple, what we would call a keyword search, a full text search. This set of sort of toy data that I have to play with is all data from a project about the National Mall here in DC. So like something that you might expect to be able to search for and get some results would be Smithsonian. So this obviously you see a couple things that are museums. We had items for those buildings. We also have some other things that came up that aren't as obvious why they came up as results. And when you go in and look at them, you'll see things like their source is that they came from the Smithsonian Institution Archive. So this sort of just illustrates that like this basic search is going to search over all the metadata that goes on these items. And in fact, we see that it included the homepage, which is just a toy little homepage that I put in here, made sure to mention Smithsonian so that I get a page result for something. So you get this. Obviously, the point of this search is that it's simple, but it is going to be quite, encompassing in that by default, you're getting pages. So any of the content that you've written into the blocks on your site pages, that can be a result. Any of the metadata for an item, any of the metadata for media that are on an item. So another example of something like this happening is if we search for Wilson. We get, interestingly, Thomas Jefferson. And actually, if we won't have time to look, but the word Wilson does not actually appear on this page. And the reason this result comes up is because this painting, creators Charles Wilson Peale, so there's our Wilson finally, and that, sort of explains, just shows the interesting sort of levels that you get by default. So one thing I want to sort of focus on in this talk is what we give you in terms of settings. So like this result set, this is the default just so that it can be kind of all encompassing, but there are a couple, even with the simple search, there's a couple settings that you get for a site that let you control this that might make more sense for what a lot of people are doing with their sites. So, and this is just on a site, if you go in the admin under settings and we scroll down a little bit, search. These settings are all pretty much going to be in this section called search. So I'm going to start with this setting here, which is these checkboxes that say search resources. This is the default, says site pages and items. So that just sets, and you could add item sets. I didn't really do much with item sets in this demo, but this controls what things that basic little search box is searching. The most interesting thing probably for a lot of people is that if you reduce this down to one choice, in particular, a lot of people, if you're going to reduce it down to one, it's probably going to be items, the usual thing that people want to search for. So if you switch to that, and we do the same search again, you don't get that sort of generic search page that we had before. You get, this is like the regular items browse that you get anytime that you're looking through items. So when you reduce that search to just saying you want to do items, you go direct to the regular item interface. So that's just one little thing that a lot of people might be interested in. The basic one that we get sort of by default doesn't give you as much information about the items. You don't see pictures, things like that, because it's trying to be generic. It's trying to account for a lot of different things. So there's one feature people might want to play with. Another one, I'm not going to go over it too much because it's a little more specific in the kind of sites that you might want to use it in, or the kind of installations that you might want to use it in, is search type. This first setting here, search type, that also affects this basic search box up here. This one, you get two choices, this site and all sites. So the default, and the one thing that's going to make sense for probably most people, almost most situations, is this site. So you're just searching the things that appear in the site that the user is looking at. All sites is really more useful for where your installation is more a network of sites. Say you have a single install for like an institution and you want to have a search that goes across all of it. Maybe the site that this is sort of more of a landing site that kind of collects everything together. You can change this setting here to all sites, and then you'll get a whole different set of results. I think in this case, Cooper was what I came up with, which would be a good search, except I didn't save it, or what did I do here? Oh, I didn't keep that setting on. There. So this is another very simple example of that. You search for Cooper, the Korean War Veterans Memorial, which is in our site. That's the architect. But then you also have the Cooper Hewitt, which is not in DC, it's in New York. So this is just a simple little example of something that would be in a different site. Obviously, this is a little toy example, but most people probably won't want to do that. But when you do, this is sort of the feature to enable that simple search to search across a whole bunch of different sites. These lists here that we're seeing where it sort of shows you the result and then you have the link. The point of these is that if you have multiple sites where this same item appears, you'll get a link for each one. So this, again, I only have these two sites, and that item is literally the only one. So not an easy thing to show for this, but that's pretty much what's going on with this simple search. The only thing I think I have to add on there is that this is a keyword. This is sort of, keyword's the best way to describe it. This is a keyword search, which means it's based on words. So we talked about Smithsonian before. Actually, let me set these settings back so that it is less annoying to deal with. We talked about Smithsonian as a result. And you get 90 results here, you get, what you'd expect, plus maybe even a little more. If you change it to Smithson, we'll get some results. So this just shows this is not like just this text is contained on the page search. This is searching for words. So that is running the results down to 4. Like these results pretty much need to mention, the person, James Smithson. That's the results you're getting here. The fact that that's part of the word Smithsonian, those are not going to be part of the results. The other thing is that if you add words, the way this search works is going to be an or. So, or whatever. So adding more and more stuff to the search here, that does not restrict the search, it broadens it. You'll get more total results, and the things that match more words in this result, they're just going to sort higher. But that's just the way that this search works. So sometimes you think that like you might continue to add more and more information, and that's going to reduce your set of results. That's not how it works in this simple search area. Okay, so the other major area, we've been seeing it this whole time, is the advanced search. I'm just going to really focus on the one for items. There is an advanced search. Let me just sort of run over to the back end here. For one, both of these things exist in the back end actually, but there's an advanced search for items, there's an advanced search for media, there's an advanced search for item sets. All these are available to you. I'm going to focus on the item one. And it offers you, a variety of choices. My tiny screen is a problem here, but you have the same sort features that you have on the regular browse. You have the full text. This is the same as, limited down to just searching on items in this case, because I clicked on the item advanced search, but it's going to be the exact same search, full text keyword that we just talked about for the simple search. There's this value one. This is probably the most interesting thing that's on this page. Class searches sort of, you can it's similar. It's the class that you assign to an item, just limits it to those. Media presence just searches whether you can decide in your search whether you want to search for things that have media attached or they don't. An ID is down to the actual ID numbers that we internally assign. That's a little more of a specific use case for that one. By value, this one is sort of the most powerful thing that's on here. So we talked a little bit about how you don't get any good control sort of over the simple search, obviously. Like you're going to get, it's mentioned anywhere, it's mentioned even in the things that are attached to it. Search by value is where you can obviously drill a lot more down in a couple ways. So one simple one is you can select the property that you want to search in. So like we had that thing where some of the results are in the description and some of them are in the source, and the search was not the most the results weren't always the most obvious. So we could go in here and we could set source and do our same Smithsonian thing. In fact, I will pick that just to pick something. You get this large set of choices. So it actually normally drops down, but my window is tiny for sharing purposes. But this lets you, unlike the other search, you can choose, do you want to have the search be exact, the entire search string that you put in? Does that have to match? Do you want just contains? Contains is one of the ones that people are most interested in using here because it's something that you can't do with the basic search. So that Smithson example from before, this is, now I got to change this other one, where, before when we did Smithson, we had 4 results. If we do it as contains, you're back to 90 because in here, that's really contains. We'll search for parts of words, anything, just as long as the string that you give there is contained in the results. I cheated and did any property so that I could get the big results there. And the other major thing it does is that you have this plus button here, which lets you do multiple searches. So you can search by one property with one particular kind of search, and you can search by a totally different property or all properties. You can chain together any number that you want, and you can choose whether or not they're chained together with and or. So do you want to grow your set of results or do you want to shrink it? So you get all that control out of just this one search. So back to settings, we might have noticed one thing that people who've used this search often notice as a problem, which is that this list of the properties that you search by is really big. And it has an extremely large number of choices because the sort of vocabularies that we ship with have a lot of choices. So you have all the Dublin Core basic set, you have all the Dublin Core extended set, you have the bibliographic ontology set, you have friend of a friend, and you might be using approximately none of this. So obviously, and that this can be confusing enough for people who are working on the site, but if you're thinking about users, they, are much less likely to have any idea what's being used and what half of this is. So back to settings, there are settings for the search to help with this issue as well. Again, we default these to not being enabled just because we don't want to necessarily assume what what the purpose of a site is, what the audience is. But this setting here, advanced search vocabulary members, a little bit of a mouthful. This is the setting, the main setting that sort of affects what is shown in those places. So this defaults to all vocabulary members you see, every choice that we have in the site, in the system. So like if you've installed, a lot of people install, say, schema.org is one vocabulary people install, and that one has, I don't know how many hundreds of properties it has, but it's a lot. And it's a more every time, I think, that I've looked at it. So this has two options. For me, they're going to be basically the same because of the nature of this site, but used by resources in this site, used by any resource in the installation. I'm going to pick used by resources in this site. Again, these two, this second one about installation, that's more in that same space where you might have wanted to pick all sites on your basic search. That's useful in a situation where you've got kind of a network of sites, parents and children, things like that. This is probably the most likely option that people might be interested in using, used by resources in this site. If we set that and we reload the search page here, you can already sort of see that it's shrunk this the space that this has to take. So what that setting does is it shrinks down this set to only include the properties that things in this set actually have set. So everything else that could theoretically be set, that just gets skipped. It doesn't get included. And it also does the same thing for classes. So we had a big list of classes, and a lot of those not get used, but some of them do. So like this makes it a lot more easy to see that, oh, moving image is one of the ones that we use. So you can see the small set of items in my set that are videos. That was still available in the default settings, but it was just sort of in a sea of the default class choices. So it wasn't as obvious that this is something that's interesting. Same thing with sound, event, still image. So there's that setting. There's one more that you might use for a similar thing, which is if you want maybe a little even more control than this. So this is useful because it's automatic. Just as you use things or you don't, it makes the search sort of present whatever you've used. That probably works for a lot of people. If you want to say use some properties and you want to hide them in certain ways, you just don't want to accentuate them for the users. Maybe you have a custom theme and you're not showing some things. Another option that you have is this templates option. Templates, there's a couple ways to use these. Obviously, templates, this is a little beyond the scope of this, but often you use them when you're creating items, to set the properties that you're going to use. So you can certainly do that. If you set a template, then we load this again. It's just going to only include the things that are in the template. And so that obviously works for a lot of people. So if you've set up a form, this is the form that you use to, create the items. You can get the same exact options for people to search the items. But you can go beyond that too if you want. So on here, I had another choice. I had one called Search Customizations. So this is a template I made just for this purpose, which is another option that you could go with. So Search Customizations, we'll just see what that does when we set it. It's not that interesting, but again, with the toy data here, but you can choose the specific subset and even specific labels and things that you want just for search and make a template just for this purpose. And if you pick it there, then you can really run this down to, if you know that there's really only, 2, 3, 10 properties that people really need to be searching on the public side, you can limit it down to that subset and get greater control. So that's all just out of the box stuff that's available with settings or defaults. Obviously, you can go a lot further with this, certainly with modules and definitely with custom theming, but these are the things that are available without having to dip into any of that. I didn't go over it too much, and I won't. But yes, just especially the advanced search on the admin side, you do get more options if you're on the admin side. So there are things that are not presented to the public, things like the owner of the item or the owner of the resource. This is available for sort of everything. Visibility, so you can search on whether things are public or not public. And one of the things that's most interesting, I think, just to think about with those features and the advanced and being able to kind of limit all this stuff down with the search is that plays along really well on the admin side with the batch actions. So that if you know how to create a search, Kim sort of mentioned this in her talk a little bit. If you know how to create a search that gets you the results that you want, and you want to do some action, you want to put everything into a set, you want to add a piece of metadata, you want to do something like that, you can do that with these all options on the batch edit. This is obviously I didn't do a search, so this is literally everything. But if you did, you can do a whole bunch of things there. So that's not really the focus of our talk here, but the same kind of search options can be a really powerful tool for you to use just administering the site, building it up, making changes. So I think that's pretty much all I had. I don't remember how much time I had, but
Doing great, doing great.
great.
That's great. That's super useful. We had a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to ask John to review and make sure that we answered it correctly. Because I think we got them right. But now we're going to hand it off to Danny, who's going to spin through some of the modules that we can use to extend access and discovery.
Yes. Just a second. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I am going to talk about, step back for a second. Just some of the plugins. It's going to be a little bit brief because I just want to mention some of them, show a couple things about some of the modules or advanced add-ons we can use for enhancing our searchability, discoverability, and all of those things on your sites. There's so much to talk about, and so that's why it was like, some of these require an hour or two just to cover in a course, for example. But so yeah, we're just gonna start right in. One of them, one of the modules that you can use, and this, I don't have an example of it because it's something that works in the background. It's not something that I can really show off for us. And that example is Resource Meta. And with the resource meta module, you can add meta tags to your resources. And so admins can actually map resource properties to metadata elements. And what that does is it's actually going to help you with search engine optimization. And so this is just a way for literal discoverability out in the world when people are searching for, maybe something about the Smithsonian, about the National Mall. They're just in their search bar. This is where they can actually it'll help find some of the important pieces of your site. And it's literal searchability and discoverability for you. And yeah, again, just something that happens in the background and that you get to set and choose which pieces of your metadata actually do have the meta tags, what you want to be included in there. And go. But the next one that I really wanted to talk about for a little bit longer, because I think faceted browse is really popular. And this is one that you get to do from, you actually do work with. This is from the user interface and something that you want to spend a lot of time setting up, I would say. And I also want to begin with the caveat that for all of these things, about that we're talking about with modules, searchability, all of this, it really needs to begin with clean data. And I'm the training specialist for Omeka, and so I talk about this all the time, that setting up your data and making sure it's clean, making sure it's tidy, making sure it makes sense, that you know how you're explaining it, that's going to make all of these other things so much easier later. without, having your resource templates and that sort of thing, it can get a little bit messy, and the faceted browse module is a really good example of that. But once you do have your clean metadata scheme, and once you really know your data, you describe it, it's so much easier later on when you're building your sites. And so the faceted browse module, this lets you set up browse pages, navigation pages onto your site, and you get to allow your visitors to search through the site in a serendipitous way, kind of too, where they get to choose exactly what they want to look at on your site. And one example, I know here I have the Peoples of the Historical Slave Trade as an example because it's a wonderful site, enslave.org, with really well described data. And it's just really easy to navigate, actually, because the data is so well described. But that, of course, takes some work to set up. Another example that I want us to look at is the Civil War and Reconstruction Governors of Mississippi. And this site, I have an example of over here. This site allows you to choose with the faceted browse module. Actually, let me click on it. This link should work. There we go. Let's look at the live site for a moment. With the Civil War and Reconstruction Governors of Mississippi project, there are lots of documents. And within here, you can actually choose the way that you want to navigate throughout here. So we have, kind of the basic search bar that we just saw, and also a guide how to get started. That's always helpful, as well as, we're thinking about those landing pages, but also just the guide, how you want people to use your stuff. You have to explain it and give people a guide. But let's go to the advanced search, which they also have. This site has all sorts of searches. Sometimes it takes a minute for my computer to load it. There we go. The advanced search, but what I really wanted is hidden behind our box. Okay, here we go. They have explore by topic, and this is multiple faceted browse pages. So they've chosen the facets or the topic that they want to use. And so you can choose, do you want to look at the businesses one, events, military units, occupations, any of these things. Let's try military units for right now. And so these are all separate faceted browse pages. And you're able to set these up on a site-by-site basis, because we know in our S installations, you can have multiple sites. So these are set up in your site, in the specific site, using the resources that are for that site. But on here, this is just such a well-done example where you can, of course, learn what you need to do here. But you can do a basic search through there if you have an idea of a militia that you want to look at, or, maybe, yeah, any of those things. If you have a specific thing you want to look for. But it's limited here to the military units. So just the resources that fall under this topic or category. And then we have the option of, I'm going to click. There we go. I don't know what happened there. But we have the possibility here, the ability to also filter what we want to look at. And so, if you're a researcher and you have an idea already, like, I just want to see the regiments or something. It's refreshing with the new one. But with the boxes, of course, you can check multiple and it will just keep whittling down the information for you. Also lets you fold that back up. We can look specifically at cavalry if we would like to, and it just keeps refining and refining. Now we're down to 22 objects or items, sorry. And yeah, home guard, this sort of thing. It might have nothing, and that happens too. I've whittled it down too far. But this is just one example of what you can do. You can choose different states it's talking about. Like, even though this is about Mississippi, they're talking about other things in other places, of course, because this is military stuff in this specific topic. Yeah, the faceted browse, though, it's a long course or it's a whole day almost to set these up when we're actually talking about it in training. And so I won't go into the background of it, but just know that this is possible and it can be really helpful, I think, for researchers because, that's why we're making our stuff. That's why we're making it public. We want people to be able to use it and reuse it and that sort of thing. And so if we make it more searchable with faceted browse, we're helping everybody. And yeah, businesses, I just in case the site didn't work, made sure to have a few slides here with them. This one, oops, this is another example. It's just so bright and colorful, so I really like this example too. Also, a faceted browse. This is from Islam West Africa collection, and their faceted browse looks a little bit different because you can choose drop-down boxes. So then we can choose maybe the Côte d'Ivoire. You can also choose just a specific author if you would like to. The type of document that we're looking for as well, maybe a journal article, um, the language too. We get to just keep whittling it down. We have the years that we can choose. And so you can set this up differently too. You can have durations or ranges of years if you would like to. You can have those check boxes where it's like, this is everything from 1890s or something. But they've chosen to do, like a separate one. They've listed them out for you. And yeah, all of these are choices and considerations that we can have. And then, of course, we click on it, learn about it. And also in the faceted browse, you might notice from the examples too that we have different column names as well. That's something you can also choose. Even what you want to be, to link out to something else, you'll notice that the year's not linking out to anything, but the actual author and the actual document is. So those are also choices that you can make. And yeah, choose descending, ascending, what way you want to, it's for the person who's actually looking at the page. We can make these choices for the site visitors. And yeah, but we also, I don't know if I finished that thought, that with the columns, you can add whatever column data that you want to show up there as well. And yeah, I know faceted browse deserves so much more time, but we don't have all the time to do it. So I'm going to move on to another module that we can use. And we already saw this a little bit on the example that Kim was using, but we also have the browse and mapping module. You can actually browse using the map. This example, did I forget? Oh yeah, Saltaire collection again, actually. That go back, that you can actually set up a mapping browse page on your site as well, because you're able to choose different navigation sites or different navigation pages, I should say, on a site-by-site basis. We can change the navigation and set up different browse pages. This is an example of the map browse. We'll look at it on the live page. And so, of course, you can click and, just find things, but we can also search by geographic location, by the value, all of these things that we've seen from John and Kim in the previous talks. We can search by ID if that's something you know as well, full text, class, only this time it's just based around the map. And using the maps, I think, is also a really great way of creating these interactive and again, like serendipitous moments for people to just learn something new as they're interacting with your site. Because, yeah, as researchers, that's always the fun part is finding new things, new discoveries. And another one that is less visually appealing, but it certainly does a lot of work in the back end, is the extract metadata module. And this one allows you to choose to extract the metadata that's already embedded in your media files. So this might be, like EXIF, for example. that's going to be the geolocation or any of the data, like what kind of camera did you use for that photo and that sort of thing. Um, so this will do that heavy lifting of extracting that data and making it a part of your site as well. And we do that from the media file that's associated with the item itself. Another one that works rather similarly, or at least it looks quite similar from the ways that you set it up, is the extract text. And this extracts text from the files that you have as media files, and it makes that searchable and machine readable so that it's not just an image with the words, we can actually read it. And this is also found under the media that's associated with your item. And you can choose if you want to clear the text, refresh the text, and that sort of thing. It has its own tab, just like the previous example where we have a tab that shows up with our, oops, down here, that we have the tab that shows up. There we go. And you can also, within the modules menu, there's a couple things to configure as well. And so, you don't always have to have all of this running in the background. You might not want to if you're not using it necessarily. And so you can choose what types that you want to be, what you want to run, and if it's just in the background and that sort of thing. And as I just keep moving right along, we also have the data cleaning module. And oops. And this one, it does low-level auditing and cleaning for your resource metadata. And this is a tool that I'm pretty sure it came along in conjunction with the data visualization module that we'll look at in a second. And the data cleaning module, this is to help tidy up your data, help to make sure, this is so far in my own personal use, I like to use it to make sure that I have place names spelled correctly and that they're all the same so that it's all fitting under the right controlled vocabulary. Because doing this cleaning is going to, again, help you have clean data, tidy data, and make sure that one example would be if I'm showing the place of the United States of America, and that's the location for an item set that I have and all the items within it. But if maybe a couple of them say USA, maybe something says America, but I want to say United States. This is just a way that you can clean that data and make sure that it's all uniform across all of your project, as well as plenty of other um, choices. And then the data visualization. We saw this with that relational graph that they were using with Saltaire, that huge relational graph. That is one thing that you can do. The example I have here are just hometowns of players from the NHL. That's one of my testing data sets. And so this is a little bit what it looks like in the back end. You can choose from multiple types of um, actually, yeah, you can choose from multiple types of visualizations. And so it can be maybe a property count, a class count, and that sort of thing, so that you can see that you have, 400 images, 70 moving images, and this sort of thing. It just depends, the story you want to tell is heavily dependent on what your data is and what your story is. In this example, I just wanted to show an example of what this looks like from the back end. You do set this up on a site-by-site basis. And so once you have your site, the module will appear under that menu. And yeah, you can write a description as long as you want it to be. You can even embed video and stuff in there if you wanted to. Um, and you can choose your search query. Again, just what template do you want to use, what item set, and that sort of thing. And then, of course, you'll have lots of other choices of sizing, the color, and that sort of thing. But just to see a couple very small examples. But the one that I was setting up back here, which was just where everybody's Yeah, this one's home country, not hometowns. The hometowns one was very large. But here we just have a chart showing how many people were in each one of these home or have these home countries, for example. And then from the visualizations, these are actually live links. And so you can click on something like Canada, and then it will take you also to a list of all of the items that fall under hometown Canada. And so, once again, it's something that it's a visualization, but it also can lead people to more discoverability on your site because maybe you didn't know that there were so many, like there was anyone from Uzbekistan, for example. And so click on that and learn who that player is from Uzbekistan. Um, and then another example, you could even do like a pie chart. And this could look better with a little CSS editor. If this was for a more professional site, I would certainly change maybe the color of the right and left of the font. But for now, there are multiple color schemes that you can choose that are just right out of the box with this module. And so in this example, it's just who shoots with their right hand and who shoots with their left hand. Just a very basic visual, but something that then you see, we think of there are more right-handed people in the world, but not when it comes to hockey, like in how you shoot or catch. So yes, very low level in exam in comparison to that wonderful and expansive chart we saw earlier, relational organization. But I just wanted to, briefly go over some of these because otherwise I would spend way too much time talking about each one. But I did also want to mention that I spend all of the time talking about these in the intensive training courses. And so I would love for anybody interested, tell your friends to come join for the intensive training courses that we run 3 times a year. We have 3 cohorts a year. They're 1.5 hours a week for 8 weeks. And by the end, you have your own Omeka project, either on Classic or S, whichever one you choose. And we spend a lot of time talking about how to describe your data, clean your data, and show off your data, how to set up these navigation pages, how to tell a story with your data and your site. And yeah, I really enjoy teaching them and I would love to have you all join. So here's a little bit of information in case you're interested, and that is the end of my little spiel.
Right. Thanks, Danny. You covered a lot of ground in a reasonably short period of time. We are almost right at the top of the hour, and I will beg the forgiveness of those of you who've joined us who can stay, because we do have a little showcase presentation today. Christian, are you still with us, and can you still share your Papyrus theme?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really, thank you, Danny and Kim. It was really impressive, your presentations. And it's really inspiring. So, talking about inspiring people, I will now share my screen. Yes, this one should work. Great. So you should be seeing my screen, I hope. Yeah, cool. So I'm Christian Morel. As you understand, I'm French-speaking guy, so sorry. I'm living in Switzerland, in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, where I'm working as a developer, more precisely in the field of the digital humanities. And for that particular project, I will introduce you with a really good friend of me. He is one of my heroes too. And this is a rare picture of him, a portrait that was taken during a special period of his life. This guy is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and maybe I hope so, this great humanist, philosopher, writer, who was born in Switzerland, in Geneva, and he had lots of problems during his late life with the French government, because he was also a great revolutionary. And he had to flee to Switzerland, to Geneva, and he was also prosecuted there. He has to go further and further. So he found asylum near the lake of Neuchâtel, which is also a small town in Switzerland, also in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. And I met him a few years ago when I was hired by the University of Neuchâtel for a special project about the herbaria of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, because not so many people know that he was also a great botanist on the late part of his life. And I had the honor to build this great website which collects the 14 first herbaria of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which I hope you can also visit. I will just show you. The URL is lesherbiersderousseau.org. Okay, I can also put it in the chat later. And that leads us to Motier. Motier is a very small village in the canton of Neuchâtel, so it's near the Neuchâtel area. And why do I speak about this village? Is because of this house. And this is a house where Rousseau had to hide during 3 years because he was going to be arrested. So one of his good friends rented this house, and this is a room where he lived for these 3 years in Motier. So lots of people in Neuchâtel love Rousseau, and they gathered in an association and they built a small museum in Motier, and more precisely in the house where Rousseau lived. And this is the building, which is at the moment under heavy work, because as you can see, it's an old house, and so they had to make again the roof and the windows. And this is a small inscription where you can see the dates when Rousseau lived. Yeah. So this house holds a museum, and this is a small museum, and they have less than 1,000 items of different kinds, portraits and paintings and writings, but also statues and iconographic material. And like 13 of small museum in the Neuchâtel area, they have all gather their items in a public database, which you see here. Okay, this is an interactive. So this is the public presentation of the website of the database. There is, you cannot really see anything. It's not really user friendly, and this is the only way to see pictures. It's really well, not well. It's not attractive. So the people of the association came back to me and asking, okay, we'd like to build a website to present all our items. Can you do something for us? So I contacted the guys that wrote this database, and they managed to build kind of an API, so I could extract from the database in JSON objects all the items, which of course I imported into Omeka S, and from which I had so the mission to create an attractive and user-friendly website. So I couldn't find a theme that could fit their needs. So it should address to a wide public, not really researchers, but more people like ordinary people, and the search should be very simple. The website should be accessible, responsive, and so on. So I wrote a theme. Well, it's so at the moment. So this theme is called Papyrus. It's in early development stage, so it's not really usable for the moment, unless you are a good developer. But let me show you how it looks like. I remember that Kim, in her presentation, she talked about the landing page. I'll show you that a bit later. So this is an item page, a typical item page, where you see this is a painting which is called the Vue de Clarence. Clarence is a village. So you see that there is one media attached to this item, and the metadata, something like that. There is a IIIF manifest, and you can, of course, look at the media just by one click. All the media have been IIIF'd during the archiving process, so they are. I'm using MyRadar. I don't know how to pronounce Mirador. Okay, you understand. And
Close enough.
okay, cool. And you see there is here there is a navigation, a small navigation so this is a custom code I wrote, which is a session variable based. So you can browse in the different items that belong to an item set. And from there, you can go back to the parent item set. So this is one of the item sets. And when you are in an item set, typical item set page, so there is a small introduction text. You can search by keywords, and you have also a custom advanced search, which you see is more or less like a faceted browse search filters. The particularity is that I compute in real time all the categories to which are presented in the current selection. I like to explain that maybe later. Under that, you can browse through the different page of the items. Okay, so here we have 28 pages. Of each page is 12, 24, 48 items. You can sort them by their identifier, title, date, if they have a date, or that was a cool thing. It's a random, just a random sort. And okay, so well, let's have just a look at the whole theme. So this is a home page. So this shows this should be great for Kim. It's a nice landing page. And you see, all you see on this page are items. So these also are items. Under that, there is the news, items. Again, here are the item sets, which, okay, you can select from there. And well, we have stories about the museum. All this in the timeline are items also. This means that the people who are managing the website they just have one console, and they are able to edit and modify everything as long as they know how to edit an item. It's really, really, really simple for them. So the curator of the museum are really happy with that. And so these are the collections and the collection, well, item sets. The collection is an item set. This menu is automatically computed. It's also a part of the theme. And well, let's go to the page where we present item sets. I'll show you a bit later how I manage all the layouts here. And what else? Here we have these are also items. It's a special type of events which we can also find when we visit. Here we have temporary expositions. Okay, and the news, which is kind of a blog from which you can select, click, open everything, close everything, and filter dynamically all the different items again. I will just focus technically, as there are many, many things. Maybe this one also is cool. These are also items. Okay. So what I won't focus on all the technical things of my website, of the theme. I will just show you that I've been a good scholar, and I've been using one of your great enhancement, a recent enhancement, which consists of adding templates to the block layout configuration of the browse preview block, and how I manage that. So I will just take, this is a working page in which I just dropped a browse preview of 12 items. And if I just view it, okay, so it's showing me my 12 items with a layout, and I can just edit and just change the layout of my page. And now I have cards, and the same, sorry, I'm a bit slow. And the same, I can have a card slider. Also, now you see that all the things I've been showing you on the website, they are just templates that are applied to the browse preview. Even, for example, the timeline. Okay, and yes, this is this enhancement that you have, even this one. The fact that we can okay, the fact that we have this availability in the website is really great to create really attractive and modern layouts. So thank you for that. This is a short list of the modules I use, and you see it's a really short list. And for example, the faceted browse I've written uses only the reference module. It doesn't use any other module. You see that I don't have the Mirador module installed. I use my own implementation of it for the moment. And I tried, because I think this is a big issue for website maintainers. I really try to limit as much as possible the dependency to Daniel Berthereau's modules. It's a real nightmare. Each time Daniel has a new update, we have to upgrade tons of modules and tons of websites. It's really hard. It's really difficult to follow because he's like a serial developer, and he's a really great guy. I met him in Paris, but okay, so it's not really easy to manage. So that's why I coded myself all the things that you have seen in this theme. It will soon be released, I think, during the summer.
Great.
So we'll have a good, nice and new theme around there. So these are the different JavaScript libraries I use. The CSS is based on Ulma. I preferred that library because it's, I think, more corresponding to what I consider to be open source and free and respectful of the privacy. And Mirador, that's all. So all these libraries are packaged in the theme. So thank you for your attention. I hope I was not too long.
No, wonderful, Christian. We really appreciate it. It's great to see it moving forward, and we'll look forward to the release. For those of you who are still with us now at the hour 20-minute mark, I want to just sort of offer an opportunity to ask some questions. I know that we've had some questions in the chat, so that might do it for us for today. But I just want to pause for a second and ask if there are any questions that we can answer live. All right. Hearing and seeing none. I want to thank everybody for joining us. As usual, we'll provide a recording of this event on the website for those of us who couldn't join us today. But we learned all sorts of good things, and I got to see a whole bunch of sites that I've never seen before. So that's always a bonus for me. So thank you so much, and I hope you will join us next time in roughly a quarter. Yeah, we'll develop a set of links, and we'll put it in the base of the agenda, Aaron, if that's okay. We'll drop them in there. We'll see you in 3 months, folks. Thanks very much. Have a good day.